Hey guys, how you doing? Josh from Smith Boys Racing. Just wanted to run you through some tools required if you're going to do any tube fabrication. So we've just laid some tools out on the workbench here. I'll just run you through each of them. Some of my methods that I use. I've already done one of these videos, but it was live, so just wanted to put it on the YouTube channel. It's already going to annoy me because it's not going to be sequential, but should see this one first, and you'd have probably a bit more understanding of what I'm talking about. Start off firstly. This is what I use whenever I'm doing sort of fabrication work, doing plates and just thoughts. I get the cereal boxes. I cut the cereal boxes up, really nice cardboard to work with. Make templates, profile templates, templates of stuff. Like I use this on this build that I'm doing now to get my steering head correct, make sure my angles were going to clear. Could fold it as well. You can get folds and all sorts of stuff. Used it on one of these plates as well, just to get a fold line for the just a fold line so that I could work out where it was going to go in the brake. Dimension them right up. You can go pretty in depth with it. When I'm sort of sketching out plates and stuff, I'm usually using just a compass, 0.7 pacer. If I want to keep it, I'll go over it with a permanent fine tip pen. So some other handy things that I use quite regularly. If I'm copying a bend, I've made up these little degree plates. That's not Cocoa Pops, that's Fruit Loops. But cereal boxes. What is just put them in the drawer in the toolbox if I'm ever going to use them again. Very handy to have some fresh pieces laying around. So what I've got here, just general marking out stuff. I'll just run through some of it. Various size rulers, 150s, 300, 600, then 1200. Tape measure, magnetic fat max. Then you get into your squares, your large square, angle gauge, various size squares for small sort of stuff. Just measuring equipment. My vernier. I use the analog one. I'm fitter by trade, so I'm sort of the opinion if you don't use your eye, you sort of lose it. So for that reason, I don't use digital. This is another one I've been using lately. It's a vernier height gauge. Price of this, just a cheap one off eBay, still 0.02 millimeters, 200th of a millimeter. It was about $60, 300 mil. So you can actually mark off your bench onto your assembled equipment if you like. So we've got that. Getting digital stuff. Inclinometer, very handy, very cool little kit. I think it's about 0.2 accuracy, AAA battery, very cool. The only downfall with this, it's an inclinometer or a level box. It'll only work this way. It will not work that way. It's unfortunate. For that reason, I've gone and just got eBay, about $30, digital spirit level with a digital protractor in it. It's really handy. When I'm doing bends and stuff, I'll just lay it down, measure the bend angles. The way I sort of work without a jig, I just use 2.4 millimeter aluminium TIG filler wire. I just bend to roughly the CLR that I'm going to use. I'll trace it out on the bench to whatever I like, measure the angle, mark it out in the book, just because you can stand on them, you can bend them, you can sort of dispose of them once you've drawn it out. Usually just put start of the bend radius, and if I've got another bend distance between, draw it all out, cost of material, all the degrees, notch angles, everything. All goes into just a little sketchbook, just a little mud map, just something for you to work on. I sort of got in the habit of doing that during my time as a maintenance fitter. Usually you get called away to a breakdown or something. So you'll be in the middle of a project and you might not get back to it that day or even that week, possibly that year, depending on what's going on. So you've always just got a reference to go back to. It's really good to retain copies. Then we get into just for notching. I use the just a semi-round file, just a second cut. I go into the square. It's not a bastard, but it's a bit coarser. Square file. I just use a hand file. I'm ever doing plates, slots, any sort of that stuff. We get into the notching gear. Speedworks make these really cool pipe master, sort of like an angle gauge. It's a profile gauge. If you've got awkward pipe work, tube that you're working on, you can just slide it on your tube, run it up, slide it up, get your profile. I usually tape it on. I'll tape it onto the workpiece. I'll trace it out. With my. This is a test and tag pen, 0.3 tip. This is what I use. This is what I like. Very fine, permanent. The only way you'll get rid of it. Sometimes you'll smudge it with your hand a little bit. You need metho to get it off. That's your eraser when you're working with this pen. I very rarely use a paint pen. What I like to do, if I'm going to use a centre line very regularly, I'll put a bit of paint pen on it, allow it to dry. I'll actually go over it with my fine tip pen, just to retain my centre line. Works a lot better when it's dry. So if I'm going to be keeping something for a while, I'll use always this one. This one's always in my pocket, lives in my pocket with the 150. That lives in my pocket as well. Always close by. If you're holding into the tube, it's just easy to rip it out. Another cool thing that I've been doing this time on this build, I've been working on this little junior sidecar. But this can be applied to any rock crawling, drag racing, sort of, any sort of four-wheel drive, go-karts, any tube work. The same principles can be applied to any sort of fabrication. I've got 5/16 plate here. Guillotine won't cut it. So I've just got a bit of chromium, steel with high chromium content in it. I clamp it down, just acts as a fence. Just the level of the cut, so straight. Just with the angle grinder, I just knock it out with just a 5-inch grinder with a 1-inch wheel. So straight. Using that fence. Use it on 3mm plate, 4mm plate. Sometimes I do have to shift it along because I did cut some off it, unfortunately, and it took quite a long time to cut through, so it's quite a decent bit of material. Then we get into clamping set. Awesome investment. You can pick these up off eBay. I think I paid about $70, $80 for this one. So what I use this for is tube, marking out on the bench. I use this in conjunction with the vernier height gauge. This was $60 or something off eBay. They do make the digital version too. If you like the digital, you don't have to be able to read a analog one. It's set up for different size tube now, but the principle is clean work surface, very fine. And these high-speed tool steel, and scribe the line. I like to use 2 center lines. I'll flip it over, I'll scratch on the backside as well. I've got the table drilled out. It's a 9mm top table, so that I could scribe 2.4mm if I want. Clamping blocks to pull it down tight onto the table, so you're going to maintain that accuracy. What else? This was my first attempt. I thought this would be cool. Made these with the centre line in the top, one in the side, cut it out for the profile of the tube I was going to be using. Made it to go with a Sharpie, but scrapped it. Scrapped it, now I use this. Use this for everything. It's just second to none. It's an awesome bit of kit. Very, very reasonable price. Clamps, just simple clamps. I don't actually use the magnetic clamps. I would like to make one pivot, like a sort of, for different angles, you know, they're fixed at, yeah, the triangular clamps, they're 45 or 60 degrees. I want to make an adjustable one. I think it'd be quite good in this sort of circumstance. So we go through that, clamping blocks. Also, if I'm going to run another line, if you've seen my previous videos, I'll roll the scribe line, square it off on the centre line with the ruler and the square, and scribe another line as well. So I've actually got 4 lines at 90 degrees around the tube. Another little one I've made up here is just to use inside bends. I've got a centre line on that, so I can use that with the ruler. Perfect example right here. I can use it inside with the ruler, get a lot more accurate than with the tape measure. I like that little one. I've made this up for my level box. I might have used it once. I don't use it very often. It's my new favourite tool. Working with steel again. I'm usually working with stainless. Magnetic wand. So this is awesome for just cleaning up swarf, hot metal. I usually pick up steel off the notcher with this. Little off-cut pieces. And straight into the bin. So very, very handy. Got my scribes. A couple of the scribes there. Buffing wheel. I usually use these. I'm using the pipe masters for tube notching. So I'll run you through some of the power tools I use. I'm using the cold cut saw. A lot better than the cold cut. I haven't mounted it yet, I just use it on the floor. If I've got a long piece, 8 meters, go straight out the shed. I'm using the Diablo 62 tungsten carbide tip blade. These things are so precise. No hot swarf or sparks. I will show you one thing to look out for. As you've seen in another video, if you've watched any, followed any videos, scales, not very accurate on these things. Always square your blade off. Square your backstop with a square. This one's off as well by a couple degrees. Always unfortunate, so I'll put a new mark on with the test and tag pen that I use. 0 is not quite 0, never really is. Just some other little tools that I've made here. Made one for every side, machine faced. I use this for notching, and I'll slide it up the whole tube. Mark around with my pen just to get a very accurate line. One for each size, little tube sleeves. So we'll go into the Speedworks. These are available off Speedworks, depending on size. 60 to 100, could be more. I haven't gone that far. We'll show you another one once I find the little magnetic, so you can lose it pretty easily. I'm using the Speedworks Model 2 bender. This package is $1,000 for the bender. Without the stand, I made the stand. Dies vary in price. I'd say around $500. Australian made, really good gear. One good thing about Speedworks, I've used JD Squared as well. They're very, very similar. The quality is the same, not much difference in quality. Price is a bit different. JD Squared being a US one, you get a bit of freight on top of it. Still good, still really good gear. One tip with this, zero your die both ways. You can't use your level box or your inclinometer if you don't zero it. You need to zero it, which means shimming your feet to suit your die. Another little trick, I use these, made these up. Each size tube, just a bit of offcut, just a little packer. Just a little packer for these, just to save dimples, scratches in the tube. So when I'm clamping the tube down, I'll slide one of these in so I won't get impressions or scratches into the tube. They're very cool too. Just go around, I've just got a pedestal drill using the Venom, available from Total Tools, $20. Linisher, I use this a lot, Abbott Ashby 200mm. Bit of coolant, very, very rarely use that. Normally using the 40 grit wheel, the 40 grit belt. Use the wheel maybe to sharpen the tungsten every now and again. Also use the 36 grit, really good for knocking out a lot of material very quickly. Clamping blocks are also compatible with the drill, so if you're doing something awkward, you can use the T-nuts and clamp down to your table. JD Squared Notch Master, very nice bit of kit, very nice. $600 through our Off-Road Performance Warehouse. I use a conjunction of the Cobalt high-speed steel hole saws. I used to use these a lot with the Venom spray coolant. I've gone off these a little bit, and now I'm using the Lennox with the tungsten carbide tip. Very impressed with these. I've done a whole bike on this one, on this 1.25 inch. It's held up really well. Very impressed with it. So that pretty much wraps it up. I'm trying to keep this video short, less than 10 minutes, but we'll see how we go with that. But anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed it, and stick around for some more if you do. Cheers, bye.